Shalom all. Oh, this thing is working tonight. Please rise.
Oh, Canada, home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Please be seated. I do see some eyes searching. Where's the Atikva? Atikva is coming. From now, when you're seated down, after O Canada and until Atikva, please stay seated. Unless you're speaking here in the moment. Welcome, shalom to all longtime friends, newcomer friends. Welcome all. My name is Rabbi Eli. I'm the rabbi at the Lodzer, a proud Canadian and a proud Israeli. Nothing, many of you know it, nothing unites us Israelis as good, as close as a terrible war does. Nothing unites Jews throughout centuries as strong, as cohesively, as bindingly as a tragedy, a calamity, a trouble does. And we come to stand here in unity tonight, which hopefully is reflective of the amazing, unbelievable unity that Israel is finding itself right now in. And Israel needs friends even more than ever. All of us together, Jews, Christians, Muslims, left, right, religious, secular, atheist, anti-religious, doesn't matter. We came here to stand by Israel unequivocally, to demonstrate, to exhibit that unity that we feel, within, towards the world, towards the without. You'll hear a number of esteemed politicians here, deputies on all levels. You'll be amazed. None of them are here to promote their parties, their political views, their agendas. All of them, from all walks of life and political rainbow spectrums, are here to stand by Israel, to support our people at the time of trouble. To introduce each of them, as well as our keynote speaker, one by one, we could think of no one better than the executive director of CAEF. Does anyone know what CAEF stands for? That's right, Canadian. Nope, not Association Anti-Semitism. Very good.
What was that?
Andrea will tell you in far greater detail than I could ever hope. We're also very proud that Andrea calls the Lodzer her home. Andrea Stingley, please.
Thank you all for coming this evening, for joining us in person and on live stream. There is a live stream audience that's meeting with Rafi over here. I'm honored to have been asked by Rabbi Karant to MC this evening's program and to have found a really true partner for the Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation in the Lodzer Centre, which has generously supported all of our programs over several years and offered this lovely venue for in-person events. Thank you to the Board of Directors, to Cantor Young, Rabbi Karant, to Rafi Remes for our technical support, and for the incredible volunteer communications done by their coordinator, Charlie Green. It's also a pleasure to partner with Allied Voices for Israel, which is a new NGO, which you'll hear about later. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce our political representatives who have brought messages of support for Israel and our community and demonstrate that standing for Israel is not a left or a right-wing position. It's just the right thing to do. James Pasternak is a graduate of York University. He also has degrees from the University of Western Ontario and the London School of Economics. And he represents York Centre on the Toronto City Council and has served on council since he was elected in 2010, representing Ward 10. He was a Toronto District School Board trustee before this election. James' work led to updating the 15-year-old City of Toronto anti-discrimination policy, as well as bringing the issue of e-cigarettes to the Toronto Board of Health's agenda. Mayor Olivia Chow appointed James as a special envoy to combat hatred. How necessary and perfect. James, please come up.
Well, thank you so much, Andrea. Minister Stacks, our MP, Rabbi Eli, members of the congregation, members of the community. The city of Toronto, in particular its Jewish community, is absolutely heartbroken, but also enraged about this mass terror attack against Israel. Firing of thousands of rockets, the shooting and knifing of innocent civilians, a murderous rampage that killed hundreds, and the kidnapping of civilians by Hamas are war crimes. The city of Toronto stands with Israel. Mass murder and terrorism must be condemned universally. Just a couple of days after the attacks, it was estimated that about 20,000 people gathered in Mel Lastman Square to hear the words of support, of shock, and hope from all three levels of government, all political stripes that meant so much to the Jewish community. What golden friends we have. Turning back the clock, in 2008, Mumbai, India suffered a terror attack in which almost 170 people were killed. Although not the target of the attack, the terrorists sought out a local rabbi and his pregnant wife and murdered them. they operated a Chabad house. I went to the memorial in Toronto, and former British Columbia Premier and MP Lodzer spoke. He said simply, there are a lot of people around the world who have grievances, and whether they are legitimate or not, nothing can justify this. If we are a city of high purpose, we must condemn terrorism and hate in all its forms. People move to Toronto to escape the hate and violence perpetuated from groups like Hamas. We must do everything we can to keep our city safe for everyone. These are the values that we share with Israel, and this is why we forever remain close friends. And certainly there's more work to do. As the terror attacks were taking place, unbeknownst to many, Jews here and around the world read Kahalas. And we were reminded of the words, quote, sweet is the light, and it is good for the eyes to behold the sun. Even if a man lives many years, let him rejoice in all of them, but let him remember that the days of darkness will be many. But King Solomon, to whom the book of Kahalas is traditionally attributed, sees a partial way out of the abyss. The solution is to embrace the temporality of life, and without looking beyond, to savor the moment, one must focus on the here and now. Mourning for those we know and love is perhaps our most difficult emotional investments. It takes us to the limit of what was with what might have been. In the aftermath of John Kennedy's assassination, pundits said that Jackie taught America how to mourn. And before that, some said it was a young Queen Elizabeth who taught the world how to mourn when her father, King George, died in 1952. But the commentaries for the Jewish community, whose rules of burial, Shiva, Kaddish, Yahrzeit, are enshrined not just in a heartbreaking rite of passage, but as a strict code to pay tribute, respect, dignity, and honor. These days, as Israel mourns and the Shivas start and end, the husbands, wives, children, grandparents, sons, daughters that were there on Friday night when the candles were lit were dead by Shabbos lunch. Let us look back at this point in time that we held a firm voice, condemning the horrors of terrorism that no cause can justify. And yet we are reminded of the great gift of Eretz Israel in this week's Torah reading, Lech Lecha. God appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants, I will give this land. Our ties to the land are so many it's hard to quantify. Many of the 613 mitzvahs are connected to the land of Israel, such as tithes, shemitah, worshiping, and sacrifices at the temple. Many Jews kiss the land upon entering. It is a mitzvah to live in Israel. The Kotel, the Kever Avot in Hebron, Tzfat, Tiberias, Meron, housed and saw the final resting places of all the great sages of the Jewish people. The late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs once remarked some years ago, quote, the journey is not over yet. Israel has not found peace. After 4,000 years, Jews find it hard to live their faith without fear. There is only one Jewish state, a country that less than 1/4% of the landmass of the Arab world, the only place on earth where Jews form a majority, the only place where they are able to do what almost every other people takes for granted, to construct a society according to their values and to be able to defend themselves. A year ago this week, I fulfilled my first campaign of the 2022 municipal election, which was to take my wife to Israel right after the election. And although we had been there before, and Toronto is our home, the connection to this holy land is overwhelming. One might not believe in miracles, but one cannot deny when they occur. As Torontonians, our connections with Israel have never been stronger. Tens of thousands of Torontonians visit Israel every year, and thousands more have bought property there. Canadians give to hundreds of charities that do great things in Israel, and Canada has sent its peacekeepers on various Middle East missions to help save lives and work towards peace. In November 2016, I was honored to accompany former Mayor John Tory, city councilors, businesses, and community leaders on a trade mission to Israel, a remarkable trip of friendship and commitment. Torontonians now en route to Israel are now en route to Israel to protect that country from future terrorist attacks and, of course, rescue the hostages. We share the values of a democratic society, rule of law, the freedom of the press, freedom of religion, the right to assemble, the right to legal counsel. Israel's representative democracy and multi-party systems ensure seats for all ethnic, religious, and political groups. Thousands of residents of Toronto have sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers who are in or have served in the Israeli military. Toronto will never waver from its unshakable commitment to Israel. Our prayers are there. This Sunday, I will be joining a group who will gather in Orville's Park for a candlelit vigil. There will be no words of hate, calling of names, no calls for vengeance. It will be a call to prayer for the victims of terrorism, the safety of our soldiers, and the return of the hostages safely and quickly to their families and loved ones. Yisrael Chai.
I'll take a moment for a commercial, given that James mentioned the vigil. This is the poster, 11 a.m. at the Holocaust Memorial at Orville's Park this Sunday. Please show up. I also had hoped to introduce Michael Kirsner, the provincial member for York Centre, but I believe he's not going to make it. He sent regrets at the last minute, but I will pull something out of a hat and just introduce Wei Dong Pei, who has joined us, and he is the Toronto School Board trustee for the area. So Wei Dong, thank you so much for coming. Would you just say a few words?
Thank you, everybody, for coming to this very important meeting. Also, thank you, Andrea, for inviting me. It's a big surprise for me because I didn't prepare for the speech, but I really want to speak from my heart, okay? You know, I came from China 30 years ago. I love this country, but I was so devastated for what happened in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks in our city. I see how people are divided. That's really devastated me. But I really want to ask the people, if you have a heart, if you're a human being, you still have humanity in your heart, let's stand united against terror. I will always stand strong and firm. I feel anger, but we had to unite together, not even against terror. Most importantly, we're all Canadians. Let's love each other. Let's work together for the goal, for the peace, for the love, and for the hope that the safe return of the hostages. No question to ask. My unwavering support to the Jewish. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you, Wei Dong. I want to know that. Could we just please continue with the program? Yeah. Please. It's now my pleasure to introduce Yara Sachs, who serves in the Liberal Government of Canada as the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions and Associate Minister of Health. She was elected to the House of Commons in a by-election in October 2020 and is the member for York Centre. Yara has lived in both Israel and Canada. She attended McGill University for her undergrad education and has a master's degree in international relations and diplomacy from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Before entering politics, Yara had a yoga business in this area and was the director of a trauma practice for healthy communities, a charity that focuses on mental health. Despite her differences with different levels of government, Yara has stated that she's an unapologetic Zionist who believes passionately in the state of Israel. And she condemns the BDS movement, which is about hurting Israel. It's really a pleasure to call on Yara. Can we all give a collective sigh? Just a. It's been hard to breathe the last 2 weeks. First of all, I want to thank you for having me join you today. It's been a time that's filled for so many with heartbreak on a very deep, deep, deep level. Rabbi Krant, where is he? He's here somewhere. Right there he is, Rabbi Krant, Cantor Young, James, Trustee Weidong Pei. It's really important to come together right now. It's important to be together because there are so many emotions to process, so many that at times it's difficult. It's a lot. It can be overwhelming, and to manage all of these moments of grieving and mourning that are happening also in the face of an ongoing war and the worst attack to the Jewish people since the Holocaust. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in on the inside, and it's a lot to talk even amongst each other. I'll start with a story. We like stories. Last December, I was in Israel with my daughters, visiting my older daughter who was doing her Shnat Shirut, her year of national service. We are an Israeli family. And my 15-year-old made the observation as we were driving back to my father's apartment in Netanya that every building along the way housed a Jewish family. And as I was driving along, going through, if you've ever driven through Netanya, there's like many roundabouts. They're endless. And I had to focus on the road, and I nodded yes silently, but it was a realization for me that I had Israeli children. I had raised them in the Tfutzot, in the diaspora, and that their experience as young Jewish teens was profoundly different than my own. Growing up on a small moshav, Evan Yehuda, if you've ever been there, it's great. I had never questioned my identity as a Jewish youngster or as an Israeli. I didn't think you had to hide it. I never worried about if the school schedule would accommodate the Chagim, and everything in Israel, as you know, is Achrei Chagim, it's after the Chagim. And I never thought that sharing my identity and who I was would have to be on a need-to-know basis only. And that's the experience of my 18-year-old now, as a university student who hides her Star of David as she takes the metro to school each day. She laments to me of the repeated torn down posters of those who have been kidnapped, young and old, and blatant acts of aggressive anti-Semitism, and the denial of the horror that not only Israelis, but the entire Jewish world faced on October 7th, and that we're still in the process of grieving while war is happening. For me, growing up, to be Israeli and Jewish was simply to be. And I've lived with that certainty of center my entire life until that Saturday morning, until that Shabbat morning. The shock and the grief has been very deep, even within my own family. But I also feel a sense of relief because, as James so aptly has said, so many, it's not just that we're elected officials, we represent communities. And all levels of government have been unequivocally clear that the actions of Hamas were terror and are terror. There remains no justification for the actions of that day, and that also the absolute clarity of Israel's right to defend itself and its people at this time. Because we know that this evil, that is Hamas, harms the lives not only of Israelis, but also of the Palestinian people in Gaza who live under their rule that is cruel and does not protect humanity. But what we also know is that
On that day, we were reminded that anti-Semitism is not a relic of the past. It's not something that we think about that happens once in a while. We know it's been growing over the years, but it is now out in full force for communities to experience, whether it is in our children's schools, playgrounds, subway stations, university campuses, and not just here, but in cities across the globe. And while we're deeply affected by the horror of what happened on October 7th and the subsequent war since then, we also have to contend with the deep fear and anger and hurt that is happening in our communities here at home. Because while we're still mourning, we still have to face each day, which is why I said let's start with a sigh, because it's a lot to carry. And we shouldn't have to do it alone. We shouldn't have to carry this weight alone. I had a colleague in the House of Commons this week kind of pull me aside. He said, hey, I'm just a Scottish guy, but you don't need to do this by yourself. And we need more of that. We need more of that Scottish Canadian, Chinese Canadian, Hindu Canadian, Sikh Canadians. I'm proud to be part of a government and sit at a cabinet table that represents the amazing diversity of this country. But at the same time, we can't carry it alone. We need others to help carry it with us. Colleagues at every level of government, myself, James, Michael, Minister LeBlanc, have had the public safety of our communities front and center since the day after October 7th, and we continue to do so. We continue to look for ways to support our local police services who are working night and day to not only protect our schools and our children and our communities and our Jewish community centers, but also to enforce what is in our legislation with regards to hate speech. And we will keep pushing. I know I will, I know James is, I know Michael is, because there is absolute moral clarity on what hate is and how it speaks and what it does and what it's doing right now. We have a collective responsibility for how we use our words in this moment and in this time, to be clear about what we stand for as communities across Canada, to be clear that no community should be afraid. If there are those who wish to protest, they are not permitted to do it with intimidation to Jewish businesses or Jewish schools or Jewish communities. In the promise that it is Canada and the Canada that I hope to build and represent, it is one that includes everyone. We've all come here from somewhere, whether it's people like myself from Israel or Russia or China, India, wherever they've come from, we've chosen to make this place home. And with that choice comes responsibility. And it's not only the responsibility of the Jewish community to point that out. And the Prime Minister and others, we have been unequivocally clear that the demonstrations glorifying the acts of terrorism and the loss of lives is completely unacceptable and will be held accountable. We've also been unequivocally clear that the hostages must be released. We know that Israel must continue to wage its war against terrorism and against the Hamas, and we are unwavering in that as well. But as Trustee Wedompe said, we also can't lose our humanity in this moment. We cannot. And there are civilians, Israeli and Palestinian, who are living under the threat of war, who need to be protected as well. And that's not always easy. It's not easy. If it was easy, we wouldn't be in this place. But our values and our shared values of human life, and of tzedek, tzedek tildof, justice, justice you shall pursue. Justice also means protecting the most vulnerable. And there are many, many vulnerable. Some that in our moment of mourning are hard to see. But at the end of the day, if we truly want peace in that part of the world, we have to protect everyone who wishes to stand for peace and be protected. So many people have lost loved ones. I've heard from so many people from the Jewish community, the Israeli community. We are 100,000 strong Israelis who live in Canada, believe it or not. And in my own family who've lost loved ones, there's also those among us, you know, the degree of separation between the Jewish community and Israelis is barely one. If you're lucky, it's sometimes two. It's my cousin, my neighbor, we all have someone. We all have someone. We all know someone. We know someone whose kid has been called up. We know someone who lived in the kibbutz next to. We know someone who drove someone to the hospital that day. We all know someone. And each of those someones have names, and they have families and loved ones who are missing and worrying about them. And the pain is still fresh and raw for so many. And yet at times with the media or things that are happening, it feels that people have moved on from October 7th. Well, we haven't moved on. And that is the story of Israel and the Jewish people. One moment of tragedy and then plunged into war. And then rising up and coming together. I speak to my aunt every morning on the Moshev, and she tells me how many care packages she's made for soldiers that day, and has an entire army of her own of young people who have pulled together to make sure that everyone is getting what they need in this moment. This is my same aunt that just 3 months ago was sending me every Motzei Shabbos from Israel her poster for the demonstrations on the reforms that were judicial reforms. And this is Israel. This is Israelis. We come together, we argue, but we love deeply, and we share in each other's joy and pain. But when the moment is required for us to be unified, Israelis know how to do it best. And that sense of amcha, that sense of being together, is one that I share in my work here, not only as a representative of this community, but also with the privilege and the honor of it is to be a minister of the federal government of Canada, of what it means to be amcha, what it means to be an Israeli, what it means to be a Jew, not just in this moment, but every day. And it's one that I take with a deep love and sincerity of the work of serving community. This time calls for leadership. We've come together in a shul. The anchoring of faith and spirituality is not only one that the Jewish community has, it's one that Christian, Muslim, and Buddhist and Hindu and so many communities in Toronto and across this country have. And it is a time where modeling that leadership from a place of faith and knowing who you are, in Judaism, know who you are. We know who we are. And in this moment, you know, last week in Ottawa, the Mayor Sutcliffe and Jewish, Muslim, and Christian leadership put out a statement that gives me a lot of hope in the moment that we're in, and I'll close with this. We urge everyone to never allow our ideologies, religious beliefs, or political positions to become a cause for hatred of another human being. We are all neighbors. We stand with each other and against all forms of hate now and forever. We're all fragile in this moment, but as Trustee Pei said, we're all Canadians. And on a Jewish note of being very Canadian, but also very Jewish, I end with this thought and this prayer. We are a people of light. We are a people of peace. May we be able to spread that now, both as a protective layer in this moment of great fear and anxiety, but also as an example of who we are in a community that includes everyone. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Minister Sachs.
Okay, sir, if you wanted to be a speaker, you should have let us know in advance, and we could have tried and put you on the line. This is There is going to be a question and answer period. For Daniel, very good. Thank you for letting us know. Everybody, thank you so much for behaving so well, being an awesome audience, so we don't have to pick anyone out, which we certainly are not planning to do tonight. Thank you so much, and Andrea, sorry for hogging the mic.
That's okay. Thank you. When Rabbi Ali asked me to invite a speaker who would make the case that not only does Israel need the Jews of the diaspora, but we in the diaspora need Israel, I immediately thought of Daniel Korn, who has insights and an intimate knowledge of Israel and the warmth and humanity that is expressed in all that he does. Daniel has an extensive background in communications and marketing and has worked within the Jewish community for most of his career. He worked for B'nai B'rith Canada and contributed to the Canadian Jewish News and UGA Federation of Greater Toronto. Daniel was Executive Director of Husband Fellowships from 2019 to 2023, where he reached across faith and ethnic divides to develop relations that support Israel and teach the truth about the Jewish people. In 2022, Daniel founded a new NGO, Allied Voices for Israel, which is building on his creativity as a community leader and the lessons he learned on the front line when building support for Israel and combating anti-Semitism on campuses in Canada. Daniel Korn is always on point, responsive, creative, and collaborative, and most of all, my friend Daniel brings enormous enthusiasm and commitment to his work. He makes a strong case for support for Israel and reveals the true nature of our enemies. To quote a recent post Daniel wrote, he said, "If the Hamas-run health ministry can be trusted, then what we are experiencing right now is indeed a genocide orchestrated by Hamas against the Palestinian people in Gaza, the people it's supposed to present and represent." Please welcome Daniel Korn.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Daniel Korn, and I am president of the Andrea Spindell Fan Club. I am also, as she said, the founder and executive director of, we call ourselves AVI, Allied Voices for Israel. AVI is a nice play on words there because it's also short for Abraham, which is also Abraham, the father of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Some people maybe thought when we started this organization, why another organization? What are we doing another Jewish organization for? And the reason we established it is because we saw with the staff that I work with and the stakeholders I work with, that there wasn't an organization specifically focused on uniting students of all backgrounds and people of all backgrounds against hatred, against anti-Semitism. We like to refer to it as anti-Jewish hatred because a lot of people don't understand this word, anti-Semitism. And we really wanted to bring Jewish students and our allies together. And firstly, I actually just want to thank Andrea so much for having me, and for all of you for having me, and for being here this evening. Lodzer Shul, I see so many people I recognize, and we just moved into the area, so clearly this is the place to be. I lost my train of thought. We've heard so much about allies today, which is incredible. I'd say the past 3 weeks have been the most difficult that I have faced as a Jewish community professional, as a professional Jew. I've been a Jewish community professional for 14 years. I've been in the campus space with B'nai B'rith and Hasbara, and now here. So I'd say for the last 78 years. And the past 3 weeks have by far been the most difficult that any of us have ever faced. And I think what's been so particularly difficult, and I think Yara mentioned that in that speech, was incredible. We didn't really have so much time to grieve, you know. And one talking point I actually say, verbatim, is that in my experience, and I believe all of you would agree, there is less than 1 degree of separation between Jewish people and Israel. Less than 1 degree. Everyone here knows someone. We lost our cousin, 20 years old, beautiful. He was at the supernova, you know. And it's funny because, again, Yara said a lot that I really appreciated. Israelis, in my view, they're hippies. They love peace, they love music, they love to dance. And all of those kids that were there, that's what they were doing, you know. And in my view, the way we honor them is we be more proud to be Jewish than we ever have been before. That we are proud of our mezuzot, we're proud of our Magen Davids. We do everything we can to show that we are strong. We're not afraid, we are strong. One of the beautiful things that we've seen has actually been the outpour of support from our allies, from individuals outside of the Jewish community. And it was actually one of those instances of allyship that really led us to launch this organization. Around last year, there was a speaker who was invited to King's College. It's an affiliate of Western University. The professor invited the speaker. The speaker has the name of Yves Zengler. Does anyone know who Yves Zengler is? Evil, Andrea says. That's why I'm in the Fight Club. Yves Zengler is notorious for espousing anti-Jewish hatred, for ridiculing the Holocaust and mocking the hatred that we face. And this professor invited him to come speak and shared it with the whole world. But for once, it wasn't just the Jewish community that was affected, because now especially we have seen many individuals who are anti-Israel, who are then pro-Iran, pro-IRGC, pro-Russia, anti-Ukraine. And now we've seen actually some Ukrainian groups standing up. And this is what happened at that school, that the Ukrainian student group saw the statements that the students we were working with had issued, that our organizations had issued. And they wanted to jump on. They wanted to say something as well. And they wanted to stand in solidarity with the Jewish people. And I thought, wow, it's so rare that this happens, where you see people outside of the community understand what we're going through. And that was one of the motivators behind doing this. I follow a lot of the Israel advocates online, from Barry Weiss to Chen Mazik to Rudy Rockman to any of these people. And all of them, I feel, have been saying the same thing. We need strength in numbers. We can't be preaching to the choir. We have to educate individuals outside of our community. And we need to have conversations with individuals outside of our community. I believe all of us know, this week I was at C-Team and I spoke to 50 kids. And I asked them, does anyone know what the population of Jews is in Canada and what percentage we account for in Canada? Some of them said 4%, 10%, 15%. I said 1%, under 1%. What does this mean? It means that most people actually have never had the opportunity to speak to a Jewish person, to get to know a Jewish person, to get to know who we are, right? I think if we were able to do that more, they'd see we are certainly not a monolith. We don't all look alike. There's no such thing. And we certainly don't all think alike. And that, in our view, is proactive advocacy, allyship, making those relationships, building those bridges. We love to talk about how Israel is terrible at PR, but they also have phenomenal friends. And we also have actually many people who care about us. And one of the things, hilariously, outside of the tragedies that we've experienced this past 3 weeks, one of the things that brought me most to tears were videos in Tokyo of all of the Japanese people singing Yara Shalom. Somebody saw this? And now a second one came out this week. I saw also in Japan. No, also about Yara Shalom. I saw. I saw one in South Korea. And then I saw in Germany. And then you're seeing that, wow, there's people who are our friends, but we do like to focus on the negative. We do like to focus on the enemies. And listen, you can't blame us. Israel is surrounded by enemies. You can't blame us for having that mentality. But we have seen that when we are able to bring our non-Jewish friends into this fight, that can be very impactful. Social media and so many other things of the last 10 years have really taken away our ability to see, and Yara mentioned this as well, the humanity in one another. And everyone must see the humanity in one another. That is so important. If you're conservative, if you're liberal, if you're NDP, if you're Israeli, if you're Palestinian, we have to see the humanity in one another. Not in Hamas, they have no humanity. And don't call them animals, that's an insult to animals. Yeah. We launched this organization 5 months ago. Okay, so we're a new organization. But in those 5 months, we have seen, and it's going to take time. It's going to take time to bring our allies into this. But we have seen that many of them are unaware. We were able to do a retreat this summer with 15 kids. 40% of them weren't Jewish. And none of them, they heard about BDS, they heard about the anti-Israel movement, but none of them knew. None of them knew what Jewish students were facing. And for the Jewish students in that room at this retreat that we hosted, it was the first time I felt that they had an active audience, a willing audience of non-Jewish students who were friends, who wanted to listen, and who were shocked about the BDS movement, who were shocked that this stuff is what's happening on campuses. I think a lot of people have been seeing now that we didn't even get 48 hours to mourn before, as it always happens, the attacks, the psychological warfare that Hamas wages on Jews, because as you see in their manifesto, they don't want to just kill every Israeli, they want to kill every Jew. And we have been so caught up, we haven't even been able to breathe. And my staff, my wonderful staff, one of whom is right here taking a video, keeps saying to me, like, Daniel, Daniel, need to take a little time off. And I said, how can I? Look what we're going through right now, right? Because they know the tragedy that befell my family. I don't believe we have the time to breathe right now, and that's difficult, that's a problem. But right away we were forced into something else. And I think now, the past 3 weeks, there have been people who have been hearing about the anti-Israel movement on campus, and they're shocked. And I'll tell you, as someone who's worked in this space, I'm not shocked. This is what we've been seeing for year after year after year after year on these university campuses. Okay, they say to you that freedom of speech, sabala, we love freedom of speech, but no hate speech. But that doesn't seem to happen. And I have seen, like with Yves Zengler, and with many others who have been invited to campus, and when we go to those administrations and we say we support freedom of speech, but this is making Jewish students feel intimidated. In 2019, the University of Toronto invited a man, Issam Al-Yamani, who was a member of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP. Not only was he a member, he was a self-proclaimed member. Not only was a self-proclaimed member, the Canada Border Service Agency had issued a statement saying this man is a danger to the safety of Canadians. And the U of T invited him, a student club at U of T invited him, an anti-Israel student club, either SJP or Students Against Israeli Apartheid, whatever they were called 4 years ago. And when we intervened, at that point I was working with another organization, and we were able to have the event moved off of campus. And even then, I don't know if that was in response to our efforts, but just because they hadn't booked the room. But he was still able to speak. An individual who was listed as a security threat by the CBSA, the organization tasked with protecting Canadians. And this was 4 years ago. Okay. Now I say this because thank goodness for the National Post and for other media outlets who have really been publishing very helpful content. They published 2 of my op-eds the past 2 weeks, but also so much more incredible content that I hope has been helping people. And helping people understand, as Andrea said, and I appreciated that quote. Hamas knew exactly what it was doing. Hamas worships death. And they worship the death of Palestinians as they do equally of Israelis. And every single death is on Hamas and Hamas alone, Israeli and Palestinian alike. And it's been wonderful to see some of these media outlets share this. But when it comes to these university campuses, this has been a cancer that's been brewing inside academia for, I would even say, decades, but the last 10 years specifically. Okay. I'm going to start with the bad. We don't want to. So there have been many challenges. Okay. And what we believe and what we have been saying at Avi, at Allied Voices for Israel, is that when it comes to the proliferation or the glorification of terrorism, the celebration of terrorism on campus, there must be a zero tolerance policy. We cannot permit the celebration and the glorification of terrorism, of genocide, of murder on campuses. You would think that that's a fairly straightforward point. But that is not what we have seen. Within 48 hours of those heinous attacks, the University of Toronto, Mississauga, I believe, was the first to issue a statement that justified these attacks. I'm sure all of you in the room have heard about the York Federation of Students. I'm proud to say that one of our students is a plaintiff in the Diamond and Diamond case, suing them. Okay. What we saw there in all my years of doing this work was the most disgusting thing that I have ever read. Okay. Not just that they call the so-called Israel, that's funny to me. Let them, it doesn't matter. Call it what you want, right? But to celebrate and applaud these brutal and horrific attacks by Hamas, by a student union, not an anti-Israel student club. Let's understand. For the anti-Israel student clubs, you expect for them to espouse hatred. But for student unions who are meant to represent every single student on that campus, Jewish, Israeli, Palestinian, Muslim included, to issue such not just one-sided murder. It was in celebration of murder. This York Federation statement, this York Federation of Students statement. Some of you might have also seen the Lincoln Alexander School of Law, the Law School of Toronto Metropolitan University. That one was equally horrendous, or maybe even a little bit worse. Same language, so-called Israel. Same language supporting all forms of resistance. Now, when we're talking about resistance, it's like the same thing that when they say, "Oh, I'm not against Jews, I'm against Zionists," right? Resistance is the same thing. I don't support the beheading of babies or the rape of women. I support resistance. I support resistance. I happened to make my tweet 2 minutes after the massacre took place, but no, I wasn't talking about that, right? This is what we've been seeing. Fortunately, there has been a response. We have been incredibly adamant and messaging our partners and working with our partners and being in touch with administrations every single day. And there has been a response. Is it a strong enough response? No, absolutely not. In my view, any person who outright celebrates murder of innocent civilians on the street should be expelled. We knew that the universities would not do that. I hope that they find their conscience, and they do, right? In the interim, what we've seen is York taking an unprecedented stand, which has been, for York's sake, was more than we've seen from York in the past. They issued a very strong statement. They made sure that these student unions must be held accountable, and if they do not apologize, retract the statement, and clarify that they do not support the hatred of Jewish people, that their union would no longer would cease to exist. The union would cease to exist. York has never done this before. So even though I would say they could always make a stronger case, this was a precedent that York set. At McGill University, they had a pro-Palestinian club who 24 hours after, so on October 8th, October 9th, there were already rallies in Montreal. There were already Palestinian flags in Montreal and rallies and support. And this anti-Israel student club had posted all sorts of terrible and despicable things. And McGill, for its part, also set a precedent and revoked the status of the club and initiated proceedings that it would not be recognized, they would have no funding, they would have no support from campus. These are the ways that the universities have been responding, but clearly this is not enough. These students have been emboldened for decades to advance anti-Israel hatred and discrimination. And I would say that what we saw from Hamas on October 7th and since then has been psychological warfare against Jewish civilians. They don't just want us to hide our Judaism, they want to bring us down. They want to bring us down to their level, and we will never let them do that. We will never ever let them do that. And on campuses, it is the same. I would never say to our students, only support Israel at the expense of Palestinians, if they are innocent Palestinian civilians. More than ever, we must support a future for these peoples, right? Otherwise, what are we doing here? We have millions of Israelis, there's millions of Palestinians. You're not going to get rid of one group of them. So what are we doing here, right? It's very clear to us that for universities especially, you cannot support one people at the expense of another. You must support peace and coexistence for those who want it, as Yara had said earlier, for those people who want it, right? And for those who don't, there's no place for that. This is what we've seen also resonates with students, with university students, with high school students, right? Because all the Zionists that I know, this is what they want. They want peace. They want coexistence. They want to be able to call for something where it's not one people and then we don't care about the other. And this is what we've seen on these campuses. Now the good. We did say a few things, and it's actually a bit hot in here. I'm going to take my job. We've seen the administrations. We've seen the responses. Thank you. And I guess the most beautiful thing that I've seen is students getting together like never before. These students who are putting up these flyers, who are having their own rallies, who at Western University, they were all holding signs. At U of T, at OCAT today, we had students and we had staff who were plastering those flyers. And they know how many people have removed them. They know how many people dislike us. And we will do it none the same, all the same. And if anything, I see that our students right now, and not just our students, but all of us, are recognizing who our real friends are and who are those people who don't support us and don't support peace and don't support coexistence. And one of the most beautiful things, going to what I was saying earlier, has been this outweighing of support from our allies. I've seen so many Kurdish and Iranian and Hindu allies coming to these Israel events. And it's a beautiful thing to see. And this is exactly why we launched this organization. And it's obviously now our goal to be able to work with students, whether they're Jewish or not, and empower them and educate them. That we have to find our common ground here. We have to be able to come back to the middle, and we have to be able to see the humanity in one another. Because without that, our society is toast. And this is what I believe social media, unfortunately, has really helped establish in our society today, this lack of being able to see the humanity, this lack of being able to talk. This is why our flagship program, we will be bringing Jewish and non-Jewish students together to Israel. We have a program set for December. Be'ezrat Hashem, we can go. If not, we're going to bring them somewhere else, as long as we can unite our students, right? And we call this program Common Ground, because we've come to this place where people are not seeing the common ground, where people are not seeing that there's a lot we have in common, and this is what we want to be able to establish. Okay. Yes, so obviously I can talk for hours and hours and hours. We have been particularly active from an educational perspective, being able to educate students, speak with students, bring students together, right? I've spoken to so many equity, diversity, and inclusion teachers and educators who aren't Jewish, and they've been struggling with how they talk about this, right? And I've explained to them as well, if you have Jewish and you have Muslim students there, you have to understand that there are trigger words, okay? And for the Jewish community, right now, this term Free Palestine is a trigger word. It's a triggering statement. It has been used against us. It has been used to hate us. It's not political. It's not about Israel. Andrea can post a picture of her favorite matzo ball soup, and there will be 15 people commenting Free Palestine. This is the world that we're in. And non-Jewish people don't know this and they don't understand it. And we have to be able to do that. We have to be able to educate and converse with them and show them, because still, there are people, as negative as it's been, there are people, you know, who see their humanity and who have common sense, okay? We tell our students, if you see anti-Israel activists, BDS activists, haters, don't engage with them. You're not going to change their mind, I'm sorry to tell you. If they're out there doing this, they're not going to change their mind. But for people right now, and we saw this in May 2021, we saw so many young people just making posts, oh, you know, free Palestine, from the river to the sea. And they didn't know. And we worked with our students and we explained to them, when you comment on a Facebook wall, the algorithm lends itself so that more and more people go there and more haters are going to argue with you. And it doesn't achieve the same results. But if you know it's somebody that maybe has even a little bit of sechel, you reach out to them privately, you engage, you have a conversation, you explain to them, you know, from the river to the sea is actually a call for the destruction of Israel and the Jewish people. Did you know that this Free Palestine movement has been weaponized against us? If we saw a Free Palestine movement that said, I want peace and coexistence, I want Israelis and Palestinians to live together, then I would be all for Free Palestine. Free Palestine from Hamas. But that's not what we've seen. Right? That's not what we've seen. And it's not how the term is used, right? And people are being misled and people are being misguided. And in my view, as Jewish people, we have the unique responsibility to stand up, to educate, to make our voices heard. Yes, we have our allies and we'll continue B'ezrat Hashem to build those allies. But this starts with us and all of us have that obligation. Okay. Yes, Andrea, I would be very happy to take any questions.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a question. I have two questions, and then we'll take some from the audience. I want to make a remark first as I look around. I've been thinking about this for a while. I hope you don't mind. We've just heard about what students are doing. What I feel is that we need to help our students and recognize the importance of that. I'm for Booby and Zadie power. Most of the people, honest to God, I have this feeling that we're a tremendously underutilized resource, retired people, who have the time and the knowledge and the resources to make a difference. I want to organize older people. I am 75 years old, so join with me. We can make a difference, and our students need it. And many of our children are working adults with young children. They haven't got the time or the resources, and they are protecting their children. We are in a unique position, so I'm all for wanting to work with you and other Boobies and Zadies. That's my speech.
Amen.
My question is, I read a study today done by a Palestinian research group, and they found that 73% of Gazans support Hamas. That's astonishing. But we have to look at the videos that were sent out by Hamas showing that people on the street were celebrating with candy as our people were being murdered. And when they were paraded through the streets, dead and bloodied, they were still being celebrated as their bodies were just. How will we work with that community if that many people support Hamas?
First of all, just to echo the Booby and Zadie committee, I know people say, oh, writing letters doesn't mean anything. Andrea will tell you that that's not true. Writing letters is a lot, right? At the University of Toronto, where we receive a letter from every single person here, from every single shul in Toronto, we have 180,000 Jews. You know, that would make a big difference, right? So anything that we can do, putting pen to paper, making our voices heard, is incredibly important. And our students especially, right now we launched a campaign. I saw there was somebody looking at our website. That was very nice. Right now we launched a campaign directly towards the University of Toronto professors, okay? Because there are professors who have been applauding resistance with no reprimand. So we are holding students to a higher standard than to professors on our campus. And we are encouraging and urging every single member of our community to reach out to University of Toronto and to let them know that this cannot stand. There can be zero glorification of terrorism and of hatred and of violence on your campuses, on their social media, full stop. In answer to Andrew's question, as an Israeli Canadian myself, I mourn that every single Palestinian in Gaza was born into an environment where they were bred from day one to murder me and murder everyone I know. They are bred. Okay? And it doesn't need to be this way. It doesn't need to be this way. I'm a person, because I work with students especially, I'm an optimistic person, and I believe Andrea would agree. I think everything is possible. I believe peace in the Middle East and in Israel is possible. It is. Yes, I do believe it. Will it take 500 years? Maybe. Maybe. The Ottoman Empire took 400 years. You think during the Ottoman Empire they said, no, this is never going to end. It ended. My parents are in the Soviet Union 100 years. It's never going to end. It ended. It's not to say that it's possible where we are right now. But in my view, if we plant the seeds, if we have the conversations, right, at least in the diaspora, it can make a difference. When it comes to Gaza, the only thing that works is you remove Hamas, you remove every single terrorist organization that is. And then you start the very, very, very slow process of trying to educate these people, and it's going to take a long time. I don't see any way to sugarcoat it. If anyone who knows in United Arab Emirates, 5 years ago, you couldn't use the word Israel. You could not say the word Israel. Okay? And systemically now, right, because all of this is systemic coming from the top up, systemically now they've changed that. And for their older people, do they still have grievances, or do they still hate Israel? I'm sure many of them do. But we've also seen phenomenal support. We've seen advocates from United Arab Emirates, from Bahrain, from Morocco, speaking up in unparalleled and unprecedented fashion, many of these Arabs. And will it take 100 to 500 years? Maybe. Maybe it will. But that shows that it's not impossible. The Abraham Accords shows that nothing is impossible. Even discussions with Saudi Arabia, though obviously now they're incredibly stalled, is not impossible, right? Those numbers are really, really, really disheartening. And the numbers that came out today in the States, that I'm sure you saw as well, that 50% of young people between 18 and 24 feel like what Hamas did was justified. 50%. Yes. Now I wonder who took the survey, because I don't always trust every one of these surveys.
But maybe you could speak about where that's coming from. You alluded to it when you mentioned faculty, and I think maybe we should talk a little bit about that. We're all talking about student organizations, but the administration, as you said, in every university is silent, or they mumble an apology. University of Toronto refused to adopt the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, which is inexcusable. There's not a single scientific endeavor in this universe that can be studied if you don't first define what you're going to study. But they're not going to study anti-Semitism because they won't define it. It's unbelievable for a university. So what about the faculty that have discipline, that in every single discipline are encouraging their kids to be anti-Zionist?
Campuses have been the breeding ground for anti-Semitism, for anti-Zionism especially. This comes from campuses, right? I know Andrea would agree. This isn't new, as I said earlier. I would say what we've seen was that the gatekeepers to academia are radical left-wing activists. And they have only brought in fellow radical left-wing activists into the academic space. And especially for poli-sci, for humanities, for politics, for all the Middle East studies. Any Jewish person who's a professor in those courses I won't use any bad words, but is an anti-Zionist Jew. In my opinion, not even a Jewish person, and not someone who would be would be sitting here with us. The only Zionist professors that I found are usually in dentistry, okay, in medicine, and there is a U of T, Renan Levine. What does he teach? He's
Political science.
You see, so there's at least one political science professor who's a Zionist. He's very centered. He's a good guy. Okay. This is all started with professors. Yes. All of it, when it comes to campus. These students have been emboldened because professors are the ones who are saying it. Professors who are the ones who are saying, no Zionists in my class. Do you know how many professors over the last 5 years have said, I don't want Zionists in my class? Okay, and that's not a human rights issue. That's not a human rights dispute. The administrations, for their statements, mean nothing. It means nothing. We appreciate it. You know, maybe it means a little bit, and it's nice to hear, but Behemet, if you're not going to do anything about it, if you're not going to stop this, then it means nothing. This is where it came from. So I appreciate Andrea mentioning that. We've seen this in every major campus, right? U of T, in my view, has become the worst campus for anti-Jewish hatred in Canada, the worst, okay? But every major campus, we've seen this, whether it's Dalhousie in, on the East Coast, or Simon Fraser University, which is also a horrific place for Jewish students on the West Coast, right? And what I believe is we're not going to make that change with these professors. You know, they're not going to stop, right? Even as you see these student unions, they're so emboldened, they're not listening to the administrations. Right now, York Federation of Students, University of Toronto, Mississauga were given a platform by Globe and Mail, okay, after Minister of Colleges and Universities Jill Dunlop made a statement saying it was horrendous what they did. And they were given a platform in the Globe and Mail, one of the most prestigious newspapers in Canada. Okay, so if we continue to embolden those students and they continue to hear it from the professors, they're not going to stop. What we try to do is from a grassroots level. We try to empower students to stand up. We try to empower students when they're in the classroom to do. There was a gentleman here who kept standing up. Where is he? Up there he is, okay? In the classroom, we need to send you there, and you stand up every single time the university professor espouses shtuyot, anti-Israel hatred. That's who we need. Maybe not here, but that's who we need, okay? And we need for students to speak up. And I'll tell you, it is tough. And I'm sorry to tell you there's no other option. I'll share a couple of examples, and then I know there's a few people raising their hands. I'll share just one example. I have a student I work with. She's wonderful. She's at the school at University of Windsor. This was several months ago. Okay, and the class was law school, had nothing to do with Israel or Palestinians. And the prof started going off about the Métis people and how the Métis are indigenous, just like the Palestinians are indigenous to Palestine. And my student who I work with stood up and said, "Excuse me, professor, but by neglecting to mention the Jewish people who are indigenous to the land, you are actively taking the support of one people at the expense of another. Wouldn't it have made more sense for you to have spoken to both, at least Jewish and Palestinian people?" And the professor actually didn't have much of a response to that. And many students afterwards came to us and said to her, "I'm really happy that you mentioned that, because I thought that too, but I didn't know, and I'm not Jewish, so I wasn't sure." And this is the problem. We're the Jews. We're the experts on Judaism. If we're quiet, if we're not standing up, if we're not speaking up, and I know it puts a target on their backs, and what can I tell you? This is psychological warfare. Overwhelmingly, we haven't seen violent altercations on these campuses. There are security everywhere. Yes, it's hard. It's hard to be Jewish. Bevakasha.
Thank you. Rabbi?
Thank you so much. I asked for Daniel's and Andrea's indulgence for a few seconds, just as we're about to start with taking the questions. We're all devastated. It's a given. And the passions are flying high, and I'm sure there will be all kinds of questions, which are welcome. Please do try to be respectful, but we recognize basically the dichotomy is there are the important, they can be sharp, they can be critical, but the important friendly questions, recognizing that we're all in this together, that are seeking knowledge, and there are troll questions where somebody is mostly seeking attention, not knowledge. Anyone here? Now, as I mentioned, we are an inclusive community. We will take both kinds of questions, right? But because troll questions usually come from the people who are more passionate, we'll start with those. If you have a troll question, yeah, if you are a troll, if you want to ask a question which mostly is pointed to attract attention to yourself, this is the time for those. Raise your hand. Raki here has a mic with a very long cord.
Those are called
We'll
rhetorical.
start with the trolls, and then we'll carry on to the non-troll questions. Please,
Those are
Raki,
called rhetorical questions.
over there, please. I'm not a politician. I'm not a diplomat. Forgive me. Daniel.
going to be harder to do.
Hi, my name is Leah.
Shalom, Leah.
I'm a very, very Israeli. I came here, and the thing is, what all I heard all my life is throw the Jews, the Israelis, into the water. And here everybody's talking about be peaceful, be peaceful. How can we be peaceful? Okay, I'm a nurse. I worked in Israel. So we had one mother come. Her son needed open heart surgery. Okay, she brought the kid. Oh, yes, the doctors are taking care of the child, and they saved his life, right? So the newspaper person comes and says, oh, but you see, now the Israeli saved his life. Aren't you going to change your mind about the Israelis?
Of course not.
And you know what she said? Are you kidding? I'm going to teach him to be a shaheed. And this is the thing. And like Golda Meir said many years ago, when the Palestinian, and there is no Palestinian, they're Jordanians. They're not true Palestinians. And like Golda Meir said, okay, and it burns my stomach and I just want to yell and scream. When the Palestinian mothers learn to love their children as much as they hate us, that's when there will be peace. So when you said peace, who do you make peace with? All those people who come to kill me, or even now where I live in, oh, you Jew? Like I had a patient coming, oh, so you're Jewish. I worked at the doctor's office here in Canada, okay, here, where I thought that free speech and everybody can come here and live freely, but it's not like that because we're not allowed. So this patient comes and he says, so tell me, Leah, you're Jewish. I said, yeah, I am very proud. And you see my Magen David, which a lot of people now are hiding, okay, because they're scared. So he said, yeah, you Jews, you own all the banks, you're smart, you educated, you're doctors, lawyers. So I said, I'll tell you something. We Jews, what we do is we eat the head of the fish. So why don't you go buy the head of the fish, start eating it, you also, you own the bank, you can become a doctor, you can become a dentist, and you know what? He didn't say anything after that. And this is the thing. Okay, I have a lot to say about that.
I think
Give it up for Leah.
I saw your friend fishing. I think I saw him fishing at the Don River.
Wait, was I supposed to answer that? If I can just speak to that, Leah. First of all, you have a beautiful name. Second of all, when we talk about peace, we're talking about here in Canada, right? I'll make it clear that my goal and my organization's goal is not to solve the Arab-Israeli conflict. That's not our goal, right? Our goal is to help eradicate and stop the anti-Semitism that we're seeing, right? And to educate and to engage. And I'll tell you what else, because I understand what you're saying, of course. We speak to students who are between the ages of 16 and 22. Do you know how these kids speak between 16 and 20 and 22? It's not quite the way that we are speaking here. It's not quite the way. And the thing is, the other thing is, if we want to be able to engage these students, there is a certain language we need to use. More importantly than that, in terms of what guides us, right? To be Jewish, in my view, is always to take the high road, is always to be better. Hamas wants to bring me down. They want me to be svolish svinya like them. I won't let them. I won't let them. They want us to be, oh, you want peace, blah, blah, blah. No. They don't want us to want peace. They want us to be lower than dirt. I personally am not going to let them. I'm only going to stand by my convictions, what I believe in. If I didn't believe that some sort of peace, whatever this word means, was possible, I wouldn't do the work that I do. Right?
Okay,
but it's not to solve the Arab-Israeli conflict. That's beyond me.
One more thing. I know a lot of people probably want to talk. The thing is, I'm also an Israeli singer, not just a nurse. So this is what I used to do for the Israeli government here. We used to go, my singing partner and I, we used to promote, go to Israel. You'll see how great it is. It's wonderful. And it's apartheid, maza apartheid. We have doctors there. We have,
Sure.
But the thing I wanted to know, since I'm living here and now, and I hear from a lot of people, and that's what they're saying. And this is what I'm wondering. Why are all these Palestinians allowed here to have all these demonstrations against me, you, and I'm trying to tell the people, it's not you just as Jews, because tomorrow it's going to be you and another people. But why are they letting them into this country and doing this? In Ottawa last week, this guy said, right? I don't know if anybody heard this. An interviewer said to this Palestinian, okay, so you're here now in Canada. Yeah, we came here, but you know what we're going to do? Is change everybody's mind. We're going to bring Sharia law and Muhammad and you know, Allah Akbar. Why are they letting them in without screening them? Why?
Andrea, do we
Why?
have an answer for that question?
Remember how you vote is my answer.
That's a good answer. I see a very handsome man there waving his.
No, behind you.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, it's okay. She has the mic.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm a South African. I went through things in South Africa, and we stood up for what we believed in. I marched. We were vocal. I hear deafening silence here of the Jewish population. People have been quiet, sitting at home, watching television. I was on the streets. I stood with JDL. I stood with an Israeli flag. I faced off with these haters. I answered them when they said, "Free Palestine." I took the megaphone and I said, "It is free. It's called Israel." I put myself out there because I'm a proud Jew. I see things here that are abhorrent. I'm shocked. People, where are the Jews? When you talk about the intimidation of Jewish students at universities for years, why didn't the parents get together? Why didn't they have lawsuits before now? This is what it's taken to have a lawsuit of 13 million.
I agree with you. 50.
Why didn't the parents? 50.
Yeah, 15. Yeah. I agree with you.
Why didn't the parents get together? The mothers. How many mothers are not working? Even if you were working, take off time. These are your children, your children's education, your children who are intimidated, who don't want to go to school to learn. Take off time and have a voice,
Amen.
a loud voice.
What's your name?
Yes.
What is your name?
I didn't tell you my name, Charlene.
Charlene. Charlene, first of all, thank you. I was trying to write an email today, and in that email, I started writing, don't take down your mezuzahs, and don't take off your Magen Davids. Here it is. And then I stopped because I wondered, I know there are people who are scared. I do, and they're scared. And the thing is, it's very subjective in the sense that, first of all, I would say there are people who are standing up every single day. There is some sort of rally, there's some sort of vigil. We were here today. I'm speaking at this on Sunday. Thank you, Andrea. I've been busier than I ever have been, right? But obviously I'm in this world. Me personally, as a human being, as a person, I agree with what you're saying. I believe now more than ever, we must be vocal. We must show them who we are. We shouldn't be scared. From what I've seen, this is a war of words. It's a war of intimidation. And the thing that I'll tell you, Charlene, I spoke to an Israeli yesterday because we're trying to still bring students there. And he said to me, "Oh, I'm hearing about what's happening in Toronto. It's so hard." And I'm like, you just lost 1,400 people in a mini Holocaust in the most despicable way imaginable. And you're saying you feel bad for us? And they said to him, "Tal, don't feel bad for us. What we have here is words and flags. So what? Let them wave their flags. Let them say their words. We have to be strong. We have to be Jewish. We have to show who we are. I don't believe personally that we should be hiding. We need to be stronger than ever, is my opinion. We need to be more united than ever. And that's something I know earlier that the rabbi had mentioned, whenever there's anti-Semitism or war, the community is united. And I hope this time that we stay united, because we are stronger when we're united. I don't think anyone should hide. I don't think anyone should hide. So I would agree with you about that.
I just wanted to say one other thing.
Sorry,
We need to move on.
I'm the only Jewish person in my office. I work for an extremely large company. There were very few people
who came and asked me how I was. So you know what I did?
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
I went to them and I said to them, when they asked me, hi, how are you? I said, I am not okay.
Of course.
Why? And I told them. And with my limited information, which is not so limited, I told them what was going on. And I said, if you want to meet for a coffee, I'm happy to share my knowledge. So people should not keep quiet.
They should not.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, in my experience, actually, amen. People should not keep quiet. Amen.
Daniel, how do we stop people from contributing money to the alumni associations of the universities?
So, yeah, if there's anyone here who donates, don't.
Do not.
I've been saying this for 10 years.
Tell the,
We're all rich, remember?
well, no, but tell those Jewish people that have large endowments at the universities, they can actually stop them. They can cancel them, and they should not be donating. I have friends who are alumni from U of T who have written letters to say you won't get another nickel from me. But we also know, some of you will know who I'm referring to, a family that gave $50 million a few years ago, no strings attached. We need to counter that. We need to stop that. So that's one thing. And the other, as I mentioned to you earlier, everybody here can stand up and be proud, but they also speak up, just as this lady's done. Tell people what we're experiencing, what you're experiencing, what the community's experiencing. Make a point of stopping somebody, your neighbor, your friend, somebody that isn't Jewish on your street.
Absolutely.
Right? Don't be afraid. I know we're going to be intimidated. I was telling my friend Deepak here that there's a plan this Sunday for bikers for Palestine on their motorbikes to be driving through our neighborhoods and going up to the
We
promenade.
have nail strips here.
Yes, so be aware and tell people this is what's happening. Maybe we can put up a blockade.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Nail strips work beautiful.
Promenade, I thought Yorkdale. There's something for Yorkdale. I don't believe it's Promenade, though. I see Mr. Jonathan Spiegelman has the mic.
My name is Jonathan. First of all, Daniel, I admire all the work that you do. I agree with you on everything. It's important for us to stand up, but to communicate with the people that are communicable to.
That's right.
I mean, the people that hate us, we're not going to convince them. It's the people that are in the margins that we need to make allies with, and we need more numbers, right? We're very small. It's very, very important work. But anyway, the question I had, and I'm not sure she's here anymore, Yara Sachs is.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, so I first of all, I have to say, I mean, this is an event that, you know, has a certain amount of time, and I think if she's going to come here and speak lip service, then she should stay for the whole event. Second of all, the point that I want to make is I came back from Israel the day after this happened, okay? I was there on October 7th. And on the Monday, less than 48 hours, there was the Jewish rally and there was a Palestinian rally I heard about. I went down to the Palestinian rally. Obviously, I was not identifiable, but the reason I went down is because I couldn't believe that something like this would take place. I had to see it with my own eyes. I saw it, I got up close, I saw the videos, I heard the chants from river to sea, and when you mentioned not 48 hours after, this was allowed to continue, a vile form of hate. And I heard it with my own ears and saw it with my own eyes. What I wanted to ask Yara Sachs is, what is she prepared to do? What has she done? What has she done from her voice as an MP in the federal government to bring attention to this? Second to that, countries like France, Germany, Denmark, I believe, have already outlawed Palestinian protests. We have free speech in this country, but we also have limits on free speech that are limited by hate. When they, anyway, there's enough evidence out there to make a case against this. But besides the case, besides the legal case, the tact, the lack of tact, the lack of human feeling, this should be a no-brainer. People who are promote political correctness are anything but being correct. This was an opportunity to say, you know what, this was so abhorrent, this was so horrible. You don't have a right today, 48 hours, to have this disgusting protest. And I wanted to ask Yara what she was doing about this.
That's a great idea that Andrea just had. Spiegelman, she sent her a letter.
So thank you so much. We have time for a few more questions, but unfortunately we're out of time for troll questions. We only have time for friendly questions. Friendly questions are not designated to attract attention to the person who asks. They're designated to seek knowledge. So everybody who is asking now, you have up to 35 seconds to ask your question. Think well, measure your words. It's not as though I'm timing you, but I'm timing you. Please.
I'm sorry that the gentleman from Toronto District School Board left. I have a grandson that's in high school. Today, he was scared to go to school, okay? And there were demonstrations. The kids in the high schools were allowed to leave school early in order to demonstrate. And they were saying, from the river to the sea. I remember when I was in school,
10
they said
seconds.
if you leave early, you get a detention.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I thought that the gentleman spoke very nicely, but the Toronto School Board is not doing what it should for Jewish kids.
It's not.
And I would like somebody like you to work not only in the university.
We work in the high school space.
Yeah, because they need it badly. The kids are scared. The kids that stayed in class, that didn't want to go to the demonstration, were terrified. My grandson refused to go.
What's the question?
Thank you. You know, I think it's a very therapeutic exercise. I think just to talk, right, and to let this off of our chest. And we're all Yehudim here, and we're all friends. So I appreciate that. We do work with high school students. I would agree with you that what we're seeing is disgusting. It's despicable.
Mark Arnault has one tomorrow morning, by the way.
I'll tell you though, do you know that the Nazi flag, for example, is legal in Canada? That you can go have rallies with the Nazi flag?
Not in Germany.
Right? Not in Germany, but in Canada, right? And the problem is, I try to, obviously our organization is nonpartisan, you know, so I'm not going to speak about the politics, right? I do think that we need a leader who takes a very strong stand. If we're going to have hate speech laws on the books, then follow them or get rid of it already and make it the United States, right? Because there's no point for these hate speech laws, okay, if they're not going to have a conviction. And in the last 12 years, there's been under 10 convictions for hate speech pertaining to anti-Semitism, right? And we see from B'nai B'rith, they're on it every year, 2,000 to 3,000 anti-Semitic incidents a year, but in 10 years, under 10 convictions, right? So they're not using the law. They're not. And it's unnecessary to have these laws if you're not going to be following them. This was very clearly hateful, right? But they are doing it under the guise of political speech. They are doing it under the guise of, no, even now, right? Again, they got the Globe and Mail, okay, and the York Federation of Students saying, no, resistance, that's not supporting violence. That's not supporting murder. We're supporting Palestinian resistance, right? We want them to resist. And they're not stupid that way. And they get a lot of funding from Iran and the IRGC through the BDS movement, a lot of funding from the Muslim Brotherhood. But that's another conversation.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to let the lady who spoke about schools know that I did in the morning when I saw that this walkout was happening. So I wrote to the 3 Jewish people on the Board of Trustees in Wyoming, and I indicated that we needed to get to the Director of Education because this is unacceptable, should be unacceptable. If kids walk out of a class, they should be disciplined. They could be suspended. They could be told if you step out of class, these are the consequences. They could be sent home. It could affect their grades. But the teachers need to be disciplined too, because why were they allowing it or even speaking of it?
That's right.
I don't know that the children thought of it by themselves.
No.
We learned in 2021 that when the kids from Mark Garneau went out, it was prompted by not only inside teachers, outside forces. One of the teachers who left under stress came to me with a video showing me that there were guys with beards who were on the streets with the kids. Now, you can't tell me those were the high school kids with long black beards, right? So that was being prompted from outside, and I'm pretty sure that's what's happening now. So the response I got, because Shelley Laskin, who is a Jewish board trustee, is very responsive. She copied my letter to the director of education, the superintendent, the chair of the board, and several other people saying, I'm bringing your question forward, and I'm telling you that the school board is saying they have no control on whether or not children come in or out of the school. So she left it open. So I wrote back and I said, well, then what's the director of education doing? And I'll see if I get a response. But I think where it starts, and where everybody here could write a letter, truly, is the Minister of Education. Because I believe that the power of the minister is to say, this is not okay, this is not allowed. And here's the example, I know it's trivial, but when teachers were saying some of their children didn't respect the Queen, and so when our Queen passed away, they didn't have to have a day to mourn the Queen, the minister, Lecce, said, no damn right do they choose not to respect our Queen, and he ordered it. If he could do that, he can order them not to support the terrorists.
Amen. Amen. Amen, Andrew Skandel. And I would just, if I may just add to that as well, we see so much lip service from these politicians. They love to make their statements, they love to say this, they love to say that, but if they're not actually taking concrete action, it doesn't mean anything else.
They were here and they were speaking and they left. So everything we say right now, we all agree on. So this is not to us that you have to tell. It's to them.
I know, but you invited me to speak. What was this supposed to do?
So those people that they were here to make the speech.
Councillor Pasternak is a wonderful friend to the community.
Next time we'll let you speak first and then last.
Nobody should be allowed to speak if they don't make a commitment to stay. That's our policy, and we should enforce it.
Wow, what happened?
Why they left? Why they left? They make a speech.
Let's answer some questions.
Okay, get to the question.
My name is Ian Gilbert. I come from a very tiny Jewish community in Barbados, in the West Indies.
Oh, right on.
Very tiny. We are less than 11 families in the island. The island is 275,000 people on a good day. We are 11, maybe 12 families, depending on who feels more Jewish. I come here not as a newcomer. I've been here a long time. I've been in Toronto, Canada, a long time. I've been here for 32 years. I came when I was 21. And my father has been the Consul General to Israel from Barbados all my life.
Wow.
And he is not a religious man. He is a Zionist. It is different. And I hear this, and I look around the room, and I see no young people. No one here brought their children. No one here brought their children. There's exceptions, a couple. I'm 55 years old. My child is not in Canada, but she is worried as well. I don't see grandchildren. Don't be scared. I'm just letting you know to bring your children to these places where these discussions take place. We are having a discussion. And children should know, you will be surprised. I have a grandchild. I have a child. They understand. Don't shield them so much that they become ignorant. Because that's a terrible thing to become, is ignorant.
Amen.
My question is simply this. How do we educate without scaring? Because sometimes it takes a little scare or a lot of a scare to make someone really understand. I am not scared.
Me neither.
My father went through the Blitz in London. My mother is a child of survivors. These people were scared. They brought up two boys, myself and my brother, and we are here. We should have our children here to listen to you, whether the politicians count votes or not, because that's the lip service that we hear. They are counting their votes. And the votes, the Muslim vote in Canada is strong because they have brought these people here. Whether they're bad or good, they've brought these people here. Our children should be here, and we should reach out. So my question is, how do we, sitting here, I see grandparents, I see great-grandparents.
Yeah.
I don't see many of me, and I'm 55. I don't, how do we do that? Because we need to do this.
You do, yeah. Obviously, our organization is focused, first of all, thank you, Ian, thank you. Our organization is focused on students for that reason, right? We are a student-facing organization. UJA is vast, Friends of Senator Wiesenthal, B'nai B'rith, there's a lot of those organizations. I've worked there. This was why we didn't, I don't want to duplicate the efforts of any other organization. And I'll tell you this, as a longtime Jewish community professional, the community is working together in unprecedented ways, and Andrea can speak to that as well, right? The organizations are collaborating, we're working together, right? So our focus is students. I would say that there are many, many, many incredible students who really care. And then there's many students who are scared. They are scared. And the thing is, for me, and again, you know, I'm Bukhari. My parents grew up in the Soviet Union. I'm born in Israel. To me, violence is scary. Words are not.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
I agree with you. This is the whole mandate of our
I
organization.
heard something today that touched me. Someone said, we can make an effort, we can't control the outcome, but we have to make an effort.
Correct.
Try again.
Right? You cannot control the outcome, but if you make an effort, we have to educate our young people. And if they're not here,
They're not educated.
we cannot educate them.
I want to show them this.
Okay, sorry to cut everybody short, but it's 7 minutes to 9 o'clock. The police is here, they have to go. The security is here, they have to go, and I want my beauty sleep. So 35 seconds for a question, not a statement, and one more.
It's the last question, and we want to call the president up. Jeffrey's going to speak.
Could we have, there was one other person that also had a question I saw.
There's lots.
Huh?
There's quite a few, so.
There's a man sitting here who I've known my entire life.
Jeff?
No, Mr. Sheldon Richmond. His son is my brother. I saw he had his hand raised. I just have to advocate for him. He's my. Yeah, Sheldon.
35 plates.
We want to apologize for shouting out before.
You're passionate. It's okay.
No, I didn't know that she wasn't going to be here, Yara Sachs. I think one thing we've forgotten tonight, we have many things we can do. There are many things we can do, but we didn't emphasize the importance of who you vote for. Now, there's 3 parties in Canada. There's probably a few. There's 4. There's the Green Party, but everybody here has to educate themselves as to what these parties stand for. Okay, the Liberal Party, Yara Sachs, no, Yara Sachs has a lot of things to be upset, be concerned about. I hate to say they support some of the Gaza and institutions. Okay, and I think people should know that when they vote. Okay, that's important. The Jewish people are some of the smartest people in the world, but politically, sometimes they're very stupid. Okay, and that's true in Canada and the U.S.
In the U.S. especially. In the U.S. especially.
The 51st state is just as bad.
Sheldon.
Right, Sheldon.
Professor Richmond?
Oh. Is he well known here? Does everybody know him?
Oh, yes.
No, I know he's a member, but is he well known?
Yeah.
What about his son? Does anyone know his son?
His wife is even better known.
I know Marilyn. She talks to me all the time. We have to bring your son here one day.
35 seconds.
His son is my best friend.
Question is 5 seconds.
could you tell us how you've made outreach to all the Jewish professors in academia? Some presidents are Jewish.
Yes.
Okay, please tell us quickly.
It's called Jewish in name only.
What?
Yes.
No
So,
Jewish in name.
so Merrick Gertler is the president of the University of Toronto.
Some are Orthodox. We were considered to be Jewish in name only, or conservative by the Orthodox.
No, I mean, he's.
I don't know. I don't do denominations. In my community, there's no denominations. That's an Ashkenazi.
All Jews.
All Jews are Jews. That's how we do it. There are many. I believe Andrea, other partners we have on campus, we have been able to establish great relationships with many profs. But as I mentioned earlier, the Zionist ones are typically in dentistry. Okay, but we have been able to find some. It's an uphill battle. There are professors. Rhonda Lenton, for example, is Jewish. Okay, at York University. While this to us might not have been enough that she didn't expel these students, I don't believe that was going to ever happen. And for her to have taken the strong stand that she did was more than York has ever done. And the fact that Andrea is nodding speaks volumes. Merrick Gertler at the University of Toronto is one of those, you know how there are certain Jewish people that say, oh, I can't support the Jewish community because I'm Jewish, I don't want them to think I'm paying favorites. He's the definition of that, okay? And in my view, under his leadership, what used to be York University and McGill, that were the worst university campuses for Jewish students, has now been eclipsed by tenfold by the University of Toronto. The University of Toronto does not respond, okay? I'm sure Andrea and I send letters every single week, as do all the organizations. They don't respond, they don't care. They're legal, and it's despicable. It's actually despicable. University of Toronto, Mississauga, and Scarborough issued very similar statements to the York one, right? And as I said, York made a great precedent. McGill set a great precedent. The U of T has done nothing. Nothing, okay? That's your Jewish head of school, okay? And it's terrible. And I can tell you that there's many non-Jewish professors and vice provosts and teachers that I've worked with who are much more aligned than he is, right? So that's been mine. There have been, we mentioned a professor at U of T Scarborough, for example, his name is Renan Levine. He's a very centered guy. He might not agree with the politics in this room, but he's a strong Zionist. He's a great speaker. He brings Israel advocates and Zionists to his class. In fact, we did with him, with Andrea, we brought a speaker to come, and it was a classroom all of non-Jews. U of T Scarborough, you can imagine the people that were in the room. There were no Jews in that room, right? And we engaged them, and it was respectful, and we spoke about Zionism, about Israel, and it was very respectful. So there are also many profs who have, who have started their own. Anywho, we can speak about that more offline. I would like to just thank all of you again for having me here. It's really been such a pleasure. I don't have all the answers, but I can only do, what we believe in. We work with incredible students who care. And I can tell you this, we always love to talk about, oh, there's no young people. I'm seeing the young people, okay? And they're amazing and they care. They really do, okay? So we must support them and stand with them and continue to be proud, vocal, Jewish Zionist warriors on Israel.
I will say thank you on behalf of everybody, Daniel. And everybody, remember, Rubens and Zadis have power. And now please stay for a minute and hear Jeff Shabbos.
Good evening, everyone. I was asked to come up and thank people, and I'm downright insulted. Only one person stayed to be thanked. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Pat.
And I didn't mean that as a joke. I'm serious. We have community leaders amongst us. We had some. There was one who we invited, Mosa Lansman, who unfortunately was sitting on the tarmac trying to get out of Ottawa to be here this evening. And unfortunately, she missed this event, and it would have been great to hear her perspective. Notwithstanding that, I really don't want to get very political, but we have to have big mouths. We have to have an action plan. We have to be able to mobilize. One of the things that Melissa said to me when we were speaking, she said, she's never seen Jews so mobilized before. We're getting there. We're not there yet. Somebody brought up a point about schools and educating. A number of years ago, we had a speaker who came to us and was preaching education in the schools. Some of us gave our names, and this goes to the Booby Club and the Zadie Club, to go to the schools and educate the kids, because that's where the cancer begins and grows. Nobody has contacted anybody since then, and I've got a big mouth. We have a shul full of people who are willing to do things, not just our members, but people here today. It really is time that we mobilize and organize ourselves. And Daniel, you can help with that. You know how to reach me. If you don't, this lady does. I will speak anytime, anyway. This is what I do for a living. I'm a paralegal. I litigate. I want to litigate for Jews. It's time that we do something. I'm really sorry. This is not what my intent was this evening, but my blood is boiling over. I have a young cousin, a real quick story. 2 years old. She was in the middle of being bathed by her great aunt and her mother. Sirens went off in Herzliya. I have a picture of this. They wrapped her in the towel and took her in the towel to the shelter downstairs. Thank goodness it was a false alarm. This kid was crying her eyes out. How do you raise kids in an environment like that? We have to do something now. So please, we have some leaders here. I'm always around. I'm always involved. Let's do something. Thank you all for coming. And I'm going to introduce our esteemed cantor to lead us in Hatikva. And don't forget about Sunday. Thank you. Oh, you have a prayer? No, not tonight. Oh, okay. All right. Well, sure, we're doing a prayer. Oh, yeah, we should do the prayer. You're right.
As promised, we started this evening as friends, and we ended as friends. All together. Let me, Daniel, do I have an extra 50 seconds to say something? In 1937, we started with a story. We should end with a story and the prayer with your indulgence. And we promised that, right? Very short. In 1937, in Switzerland, there was the last before war conference of Abu Dhabi, Israel. As you know, the Orthodox, very Orthodox party. They defined, established, and called out the three, as they called them, the four greatest dangers to the Jews, to the Judaism in their day. Those four greatest dangers were, listen to this carefully, Bundism, or nationalism, communism, Zionism, and secularism. People, this was 1937. That's what's in your kopf. That really is what you see as the danger. I hear a lot of grievances, a lot of gripes, a lot of dissatisfactions that we all may carry with each other, small and large. There are people out there, there are people out here who think that what Hamas did is okay, that there are circumstances when it's okay to murder a baby. You're going to point your fingers at a politician or a representative who did not say entirely what you hoped they would say. If we start infighting, we have not a chance. Please stand together. This is my prayer, a prayer of, in part, desperation, in part, hope, always in a large part of chutzpah. Please join, and if this prayer does not include your aspirations, your hopes, by all means, make your own. Our God and God of our ancestors, take notice of our plight as we cry out to you from the bottom of our hearts. We pray before you, strengthen our spirit in face of the calamity. Teach us to stay united in love and mutual respect, so we shall have no need for a brutal enemy to come from without and put an end to our foolish infighting. For it is promised, and all your children will be students of God, and great will be the peace of your children. Protect us, save us and our people, and all peace-loving people of the earth, from vile enemies and wild beasts, from senseless hatred and wanton destruction. Let children return safely to their parents, and parents to their children. Reunite our families with their loved ones. For it is said, there is hope for your descendants, declares God, and your children will return to their land. God Almighty, we are asking for a lot, and we know it. But then we do go a long way back together. Protect those who are protecting us. Give solace to those who experience senseless loss. Mend their hearts that are torn with pain and grief. Give us courage and strength to support each other and all around us. Give our leaders wisdom and perspicacity. Strengthen their hands, for they need to be our guiding light on the way to rebuilding and recovering. And let us say, Amen. Can there be?
Kol Baleva Venima Nefesh Yehudi Homiya Utate Mizra Adima Ain Lezion Sophia Od Ladati Kateinu Ahati Vashnat Alpayim Liot Amchoshi Eartseinu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim Liot Amchoshi Be'artseinu Eretz Zion Yerushalayim.